Welcome to All the F Words,
a podcast where two writer friends, nearly 30 years apart, explore everything we give an F about. I'm Gabi Moskowitz.
And I'm Joanne Green. On each episode of All the F Words, we'll focus on a theme starting with the letter F. Things like future, foolishness, funk, and fishing.
We'll share stories from our lives and our distinct generational perspectives and look to the experts for insights and ideas.
Today we're going to talk about turning 40, which, Gabi, if I'm not mistaken, you're about to do.
Yes.
Should I even ask how you're feeling about it?
Well, my feelings are mixed, but why don't I start us off with a quote I found from Dante's Inferno.
Oh, good. Something light and fun to kick us off.
Okay, so this is at the start of his trip into hell in Inferno, which was written, by the way, when he was 42. And this is what he says. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself within a dark wood where the straight way was lost. To go on living after 40 is unseemly, disgusting, immoral.
Why are you reading this trash? I think you're reading trash. I better not think that to go on living after 40 is unseemly, since I'm way past that and my life just keeps getting better. So that's all I have to say.
Well,
I had a birthday and it's all awesome.
I know. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, Dante was a little dramatic. I think that's understood. He, like many poets, he was very dramatic. But in all seriousness, you know, I've been thinking a lot about my upcoming birthday. I think when we air this episode, my birthday is going to be a couple days later. It's going to be on Sunday, March 13th. And
yeah, and she's accepting cards and flowers.
I am, absolutely. Feel free to Venmo me if you're feeling sorry for how old I'm getting. But, you know, I'm having mixed feelings. I'll talk first about myself. I am so happy with where I am in life. I'm really fortunate to feel that way. I have a wonderful husband. I have two amazing kids. I feel really good about my career. I love all of my friends. You know, this is kind of a scary time to be in the world, but it feels like some things are starting to get better, God willing. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. At the same time, I have these moments where I just can't believe that I'm allowed to do grown-up stuff. Like, I just sometimes really feel like I'm 13 or 6 or 17 or 3. And the fact that I'm a grown-up who's allowed to be out in the world is already crazy. And I remember when my parents turned 40. I don't remember when they turned 30, but I do remember when they turned 40. And they seemed like grown-ups. And it's just a real sort of sense of the passage of time. So,
sure.
You know,
did you think they were old when they turned 40?
I mean, in the sense, yeah. Well, I think it was still at the time when I equated height with age. So, you know, they just seemed enormous height-wise. And so, of course, and by the way, they are very average height people. It was absolutely my perspective, which, you know, I mean, 40 seemed like, in truth, my high school teachers were probably in their late 20s, you know, to early 50s. And they all seemed very old to me when I was a kid. I recently reconnected with an old teacher, and I asked her how old she was when she was my history teacher in high school. She was 28 years old. And like she just seemed older than not that she seemed old, but just age is a very weird thing, having a sense of how old someone is.
Well, it's all right. It's all in the perspective and what you're looking at. I certainly would have had absolutely no idea that I would look and feel like I do at the age that I am. I had a perception always that late 60s, I mean, I'm in my late 60s. What the heck, right? And I feel fantastic. I have tons of energy until I crash, which has always really been the case for me. But I feel great, and a lot of it's in the attitude, right? There are people who are old who are 30, and there are people who are young who are 80.
Absolutely. There is one thing I learned is that there is a scientific component to some of what you're talking about. So one thing that's really interesting about right now is that millennials are turning 40. So that's people who were born, I believe it is, and I think I'm technically an elder millennial or a zennial, so sort of on the cusp of Gen X and millennial. But I'm somebody who didn't have the internet until, for me, my late teens. And then a lot of millennials who are younger, maybe had social media in high school, late high school, early college. But for the most part, it's people who were born, I think, between 1980 and 1990, something like that. Maybe early 90s. But the oldest of us are beginning to turn 40. And what's interesting about that is that this is the first generation turning 40 where we have some concrete science about what happens to your brain as it ages. And one thing that's really interesting and promising and may speak to a little bit of what you're talking about is that apparently there's this like slope where as you're approaching 40, you've become pessimistic about your life and you start thinking about all these things that need to change, right? And that leads us to the midlife crisis, right? So for some people, that looks like having an affair. For some people, that looks like buying a car. I'm not sure what my midlife crisis is going to look like. Gotten really into fitness. Hopefully that'll be it. Hopefully it's just super into exercise and that's it. But who knows? Maybe I'll start skydiving. But anyway, so people have some kind of, they start feeling negative about something, and that often leads to a desire to make some sort of big change. But then whether or not the change actually improves their happiness, what happens around 47, 48, 49 is there is an actual shift in our brain chemistry, and people start to feel really great approaching 50. And there are some scientists who have said that quality of life after 50, despite health challenges that come with aging, improves so much, regardless, and this I thought was really interesting, regardless of income, regardless of marital status, regardless of whether or not you have kids, there is an actual brain chemistry shift in your late 40s into early 50s, where people just start feeling more optimistic about life. So it sounds like that matches your experience. What were your
It doesn't
late
surprise
40s,
me at
50s?
all. Well, who can remember back that far? But I can, no, that's not true. What I was going to say is one thing that does happen as you get older for many people. And again, these are just, gross generalizations. And if you don't fit into this, you're not a weirdo. It's just, we're all different and our brain chemistry is all different. But as we get older, we start to really get to know ourselves better and accept ourselves for who we are. And I saw a little chart once that showed as you get older and older and older, that was one part of the graph, and the other half of the graph was called give a shit. And so as you got older and older, you gave less and less and less of a shit. Are you imagining this graph with the two
absolutely.
axes?
Fewer
Right.
shifts given the older you get. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more like, this is who I am. I'm not behaving every day and in every way to please other people necessarily, or to get more likes or whatever whatever it is, the thing of the day. And so when that exactly happens, sure, I believe you, late 40s to 50s, and then it keeps happening. That's the part I want to say. So it is that ongoing tension between health changes, but even more than that, I would say fear of health changes. I found out there is actually a name for fear of getting old, is geraskophobia. Now you can promptly forget that because we don't have it. And then the other thing is that it's not just FOMO, fear of missing out. It's FOGO, fear of getting old. It's a thing. And what is it that people are afraid of? They're afraid of becoming undesirable. And that's like in whatever way. So it can be, sexual attractiveness. Obviously, we know from our faces episode that there are things changing in our faces and the muscles, and we get jowls and double chins and all of that. But age discrimination in the workplace is very real. So if people are concerned about not only the fact that they're aging, but the fact that they look like they're aging, it may have very serious practical and in some cases financial consequences. So that's reasonable. Lots of other people fear sickness, pain, and suffering. Losses, which are not only the fact that more and more people are going to be dying in your life as you get older, but also the loss of, for instance, sharpness. Cognitive decline is also a thing. And so I don't know when that starts happening, when you start. Well, you've had 2 babies, so you already know that you lost some brain cells right there, right? You didn't necessarily remember why you walked into the room and keeping 2 thoughts, at the same time.
But there is, I do think the flip side of that part is the brain elasticity. I've experienced it with motherhood, but as there is a flip side. Even though it becomes harder to remember things, the way that our brains adapt to our new circumstances. So since becoming a mom, despite the fact that I frequently cannot conjure a word that I'm trying to say, I also can multitask so much better than I ever used to. So I'm curious if with age, as our life circumstances shift and change, if we see that at all with people adapting to their new circumstances. And maybe, it's a result. Maybe once, if you don't continue to have the same amount of stuff in your life and things and people and activities, then perhaps some of that is a result of your life becoming smaller. But I wonder if you continue, you live such a full and active life, and I would imagine that keeps your brain sharp in a lot of ways.
It's that, or it's Wordle and the spelling bee and the New York Times crossword puzzle. But I figure, if I eat blueberries, I'm doing all the things that are supposed to stave off dementia, and we'll see. But the other thing is, I think it's twofold. One, yes, get that exercise you were talking about, eat well, have real relationships, where you're honest and all of that. But also just cut yourself some slack. I'm big on that. So when I don't remember what I came into the room for, okay, I'll think of it later if it was important enough, and if not, whatever. But I don't sit there going, oh my God, why can't I remember that? Because that's not nice to myself.
That's not going to help.
I'm trying to be nicer. No, it's not going to help at all. Tell me about midlife crisis. I'm really curious about this. And how do we define what midlife is?
Midlife is, I didn't find an official explanation, but I do remember seeing recently and being a little surprised. Even though I'm not surprised by the information, I'm just surprised as a person who's about to turn 40. Midlife, by some definitions, starts around 35, which seems wild. But by many other definitions, starts between 40 and 45. And which makes sense, if we think of humans as living but somewhere between 80 and 100, 40 is basically right there in the middle. And what happens is, so there was a book that I did not read the entire thing, I will admit, but that I read a lot from, called The Happiness Curve by Jonathan Rauch, I think is how you pronounce his name. And he was a long-term journalist. And so in his early 40s, he wanted to explore the fact that he was hearing a lot of negative voices in his head that were telling him he'd wasted his life, he should move, he should quit his job immediately, even though he had done way more than he ever expected when he was 20. He didn't. Between 20 and 40, he accomplished a lot. He won a prestigious national magazine award. He was in a very happy relationship with his husband. He's gay and had spent many, many years in the closet. And so coming out and getting married was a total victory. But what happened was as he got older, his values began to shift. His expectations of himself hadn't really adjusted to where he was in life. And what he found is that the older he got, the more, as I was saying before, there's this sort of upturn in late middle age that leads to surprising happiness in late adulthood. So the midlife crisis is an actual thing. There's a profound dip in life satisfaction that begins around the age of 40. And nobody knows exactly why it is, but I think if I had to guess, it has to do with just, it's the first time in your life when you have pretty significant mileage. And I would imagine that in this day and age, especially now that we're looking at millennials, although all generations seem to be on social media, but the tendency to compare ourselves to our peers, especially now, I think 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't really see what anyone else was doing except for what you heard about people or the peers, and friends who were right in front of you. But now I know what everyone I graduated from college is doing. I know where they're working. I know how many children they have. I know how nice their houses are because of social media. And the tendency to compare ourselves to others, I think that component of it has made it so much worse. And so
Which is very damaging for kids and is clearly also an issue for people at every age. One of the things that I think about that stage of life is that prior to your, say, mid to late 30s and certainly turning 40, it's still a possibility that your life will go in completely unexpected directions. Whereas by that point, if you are in the relationship that you feel you're going to be in for the rest of your life, or at least the foreseeable future, you have your children, so these are the other members of your family. Your career often is pretty well set and determined. So it may be that moment where you say, oh, this is it. Like, I'm not going to write a Nobel Prize winning something or a Pulitzer Prize winning something. This is it.
So there's this comedian that I really love named Alex Edelman, and he's actually younger than I am. He's maybe in his late 20s, early 30s. So he's definitely not dealing with middle age yet. But he has this bit that I love, and we'll link it in the show notes, where he talks about how he had this experience where he was reading about, I think it was a rock climber who had climbed El Capitan in Yosemite or some really hard rock to climb. I'm not sure. But he was talking about how he had this impulse, and I related so much to it, to immediately check this guy's age, to figure out whether he was older or younger than Alex. And then he's reflecting on it, and he goes, and it's so absurd, right? Because what is it? What am I saying? Am I saying that when I discovered that he's 2 years older than I am, like, one of these days I'm going to really get my shit together and become an award-winning rock climber, right? And I have that experience all the time. And one of the things that's wild about turning 40 is that it's the first time in my life when there are a lot of people who aren't just super young phenoms who I'm reading about, who are accomplishing a lot, people in the news, writers, people in my field, who are accomplishing a lot and are not just a couple of years younger than I am, but sometimes 10 years younger, sometimes maybe 15 years younger than I am, because that's when some people have a lot of success. Now, of course, at the same time, there are a lot of people who have, lots of success later in life, and that is like Dante, for example. Some of his most popular works were published after Inferno, when he wrote that sort of depressing quote. But I do think our 40s, it's like we've got a critical mass of mileage and also a sense of where we are as compared to everyone else and where we imagined we'd be. This is the thing that's trippy. When you turn 30, and I remember turning 30 felt like a big deal, but when I turned 30, I had just met my husband. I had published I think I had published, I was about to publish my first book. And like, I felt like the world was my oyster. And turning 40, I also feel really good about things, but I now have clear memories of people turning 40 and what I imagined that to look like. And it's just hard not to compare and contrast yourself. Let me tell you, I've been thinking about this the last week. This is what I want to focus on in this next decade of my life, or at least this next year. I want to stop explaining myself so much. That's my goal for turning 40. And maybe that's my version of giving less of a shit, but I want to stop. We're really swearing a lot in this episode. So,
well, we should just say giving less of an F. Shouldn't we say giving less of an F?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. I want to give less of an F, but specifically, like, my action item on that is that I want to stop explaining myself so much. I think I do it all the time. I do it at the grocery store. I find myself compelled to explain if the cashier makes a comment about something, just a friendly offhand comment. I feel the need to explain, oh, yes, I really like those chocolate chips. I find that they melt the best. And so that's what I'm going to be using in the cookies that I'm making. It's not even that nobody cares, but nobody needs to know. Nobody's worried about why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. And I stress myself out too much by explaining myself. And you know what? I'm a 40-year-old lady and I don't need to explain anything to anybody.
Amen. So, that's great. I'm very proud of you. I like that. So a couple of things popped into my head as you were talking. One is remembering so clearly the moment when the president of the United States was younger than me. Like, that's a weird one. Oh. It starts off like
the first
where you
one
are
Obama?
now and you look. Yeah. I mean, Clinton felt like he was like a peer, but yeah. And then something else happened in between. President. I don't remember. Right. So, we listened to the same music. There was something going on. I went to his first inauguration. It was this moment of like, oh my God, we're finally getting power. Let's not depress ourselves here. But so there's that. But you can already look at, sports stars, and they're all younger than you, right? The careers are over by the time they're 39. So there is that, and that's daunting. The other thing I wanted to say is
I'm not going to become a basketball star. Are you saying that my time has passed to join the WNBA?
They might have a special league for people like you. I don't know. Check the Jewish Community Center, for instance. But what I did want to say is that when you're a baby of the family, like I am by so much, I just always wanted to be older. So when I was turning 40, I remember thinking, now I'm legit. Now people will take me seriously, finally. And you, as the oldest in the family, you just haven't had that whole thing. Yeah. So I remember very much turning 40 and cute story. So I was turning 40. My mom, who had me at 40, was turning 80. And neither of us wanted a big fuss made about this. But Fred, my husband and our producer, decided he wanted to throw a 40-80 party. So he put this all together, and her birthday's in November, mine's in February. So we did it as a New Year's Eve party. We rented little tiny tuxedos for our boys. We choreographed a little dance to a Michael Jackson song that we performed. We rented a dance floor for our living room. Oh my God. What song? I know this. I Want You Back? Is that a song?
Yeah.
Fred,
that's the Jackson 5.
Fred. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the Jackson 5.
That's so
Am I
cute.
right, Fred?
You and your mom did it?
No, Fred and I and Danny and that other child of mine whose name I don't use on the podcast.
That's so cute.
Right. So I'll show you the video. I don't know. Can we link to it in the show notes? I think we should link to it in the show notes.
Is it somewhere public? Is it like on YouTube?
Have you met Fred Green? Of course it is on YouTube.
That seems like the kind of thing we should, go ahead.
Absolutely. It's good. You can see the future written right all across this. And so anyway, we had a 40/80 party and it was awesome. And I remember Danny, who at the time, I don't know, I can't remember because that would be a math problem, but like 10 or something, made a little toast to my mom and told her that he promised to say the mourner's Kaddish for her when she died. And it was like she wasn't close to dying. She was in really good shape. So it was this awkward moment of, oh, isn't that sweet? Oh, please stop saying that.
That's so cute. Oh, God.
It was cute. But yeah, 40. 40's great. I mean, from where I'm sitting.
I'll tell you, the 40th birthday I remember the most, and I don't think he would mind me talking about this. So I was the oldest kid in my family, but I have the benefit of always getting to be the sexy younger wife of an older man. So Evan is almost 8 years older than I am. He's like 7 years and 9 months older than I am. And so I get to go through a lot of these milestones with him ahead of time. And when he turned 40, we had been together for 2.5, 3. We met when he was 37 and I was about to turn 30. I was 29. And so when he turned 40, we've been together for about 2.5 years. And he had not a total meltdown, but he had a tough time turning 40. We went on a vacation or just a weekend away. We went to St. Helena and he just could not get comfortable. He had this feeling that like nothing was going to be right. The hotel room we got, the view wasn't going to be pretty enough. The dinner reservations were not going to be, he's not a spoiled brat at all, but
and I was going to say, paranoid. And that sounds out of character. That sounds out of character.
It was very out of character. He was, it was like all of a sudden everything had a lot of significance and he was so stressed out about whether or not he was going to be okay. And he actually wrote a piece about it, wrote a blog about it. And there's a picture, maybe I'll see if I can find it. We'll link it in the show notes. There's a picture of him on the blog looking very grumpy, eating an expensive popsicle that I bought him at this little paleta shop. So he had a super tough time. And then on his actual birthday, we went out to this really fancy restaurant and I gave him a beautiful watch. And it was like, I think it was like he faced the wall of awful, which is a phrase he uses a lot. He faced the wall of awful. He discovered that it was not as bad as he thought it was going to be. And then we had a great rest of the time. So I'm trying to give myself some grace and some space to approach my 40th birthday and feel whatever feelings I'm having and also take pleasure in the fact that I always get to be the younger one. I always get to be
turn that wall of awful into a waffle.
There you go.
Because a waffle is always better. That's a good one for Ducky. Tell her.
I will. She will definitely appreciate that one. She loves a good pun.
You don't need a wall of awful, you need a waffle. That's the point, right? When you have lemons, you turn them into lemonade. There are always going to be the yin and the yang, the two sides. I always have the two little, our inclination to do good and our inclination to do evil. They're all a part of us, right? Mm-hmm. And we can look at the glass as half full or look at the glasses as, what's the opposite? Half empty. See, I don't even remember because it's always half full as far as I'm concerned.
So can you give me some advice? Tell me if there were 3 things you would want someone turning 40 to know. Tell me what they are. Give me your 3 best pieces of advice for coming to this season of life.
All right, this is like completely off the top of my head. You gave me no warning for this. So these are going to be just, I would say, number 1, focus on gratitude. So I would say at some point each day, but certainly on those moments where you begin to doubt yourself or fear things, And three's a good number. Remember 3 things that you're grateful for at this very moment. So that's 1. 2, I would say the world is your oyster at 40. Everything is possible. 40's the new 20 or maybe 30 because for sure 70's the new 50. So you've got an entire world and life ahead of you. And so dream big. Dream big and demand of the people who love you support for your dreams, support for your risk taking, and give that back to them as well. And then the third thing I would say is just like, don't look in the mirror so much because we look great. It's awesome. And, fewer selfies because yes, there are going to be little crow's feet and, you have no gray hair, but at some point, you might have 1 or 2. So just don't sweat it. Who cares?
I love it. I love it.
I have white hair, right? Who cares?
And it looks so good on you.
See this neck? Oh, thank you.
It's a neck
but
that
it's
has
really
lived.
much. It is a neck that has lived, absolutely. And I cannot wait to celebrate your 40th birthday. What are we going to do? Let's eat.
Oh, I want to eat. Let's definitely eat something good and something that I don't have to cook.
Absolutely. Oh, I'll take you out. That'll be fun. Thanks so much for listening to all the F words. At whatever age you are, 40, 50, there are no other ones that begin with Fs, but we wish you a happy birthday if your birthday is now. 15, 14, 4.
Yep.
And follow us on social media. Gabi will tell you all the places because she has it memorized.
I sure do. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at All the F Words Pod. You can also email us at allthefwordspod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Bye.